Superwife's 3 babies. Chapter 1 to Chapter 5. By the time Olivia Maxwell regained consciousness, it was the morning after. She walked along the main road in a daze, and a single, scorching hot tear rolled down her face unexpectedly. Yesterday was her birthday. At first, she was going to meet up with her fiancé, Hugo Gray, for a date. However, she unexpectedly ran into him while he was cheating on her with her stepsister. At that moment, the only thought that ran through her mind was to make a scene and question them with the only remaining shred of dignity she had left. She decided instead to give them a taste of their own medicine, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. I am going to get my revenge. I am going to make them pay for this dearly. In the beginning, she thought that everything had come to an end with that. However, she realized 2 months later that she was pregnant. Olivia felt cold all over as she stared at her stepsister standing in front of her. At the same time, her stepsister's mocking expression stepped into her heart painfully. Anna Maxwell pretended to be shocked. Olivia, weren't you still dating Hugo 2 months ago? How could you do something like this to him? Olivia stared at Anna and sneered. Aren't you ashamed of what you did? Besides, whatever happens between Hugo and I is none of your business. At the time, she only said that she wanted to break up and did not say anything about their disgusting cheating to preserve their dignity. However, she did not expect Anna to act so shamelessly. How dare she mention the events from back then? A flash of guilt flitted across Anna's eyes. She had not expected Olivia to bring up the truth in front of their father right now. Thus, she pointed at Olivia and raised her voice. Don't talk nonsense. That night, you stayed out all night. Then, you broke up with Hugo the very next day. The only reason I agreed to take your place and become Hugo's fiancé is for the sake of a successful union between our families. Even if you don't understand my pain, you shouldn't wrong me by saying such words. As she spoke, her tears fell freely down her face. Olivia's stepmother, Amy Davis, had been sitting by the side. Just then, she hugged Anne and said in displeasure, Olivia, you shouldn't speak without evidence. You might not care for your own reputation, but your sister is still young. How is she going to hold her head up in society if you ruin her reputation? Olivia was so mad that she burst out laughing. I saw the two of them together myself. Do I need to obtain the surveillance footage for you? Slap. As soon as the words came out of her mouth, she felt a slap hitting her hard across the face. It left half her face feeling numb from the force. Clutching at her cheek, she looked toward the man who hit her in disbelief. Dad, why did you hit me? Your sister sacrificed so much for this family. On the other hand, look at you. How dare you shame your sister? You've embarrassed me so much, I can't even hold my head up anymore. I am warning you, Olivia Maxwell. Go to the hospital now, or you will be disowned from the Maxwell family. Olivia's breath hitched, and she felt a wave of tears threatening to fall. Even so, her voice was strangely firm. I will not go to the hospital to get an abortion. Then get out of here. From today onward, you are no longer my daughter. Henry Maxwell shouted furiously while pointing in the direction of the door. Olivia glanced at Henry, then glanced at the mother and daughter pair, who were sitting on the sofa and gloating over her distress. After that, she spun around coldly and walked away resolutely. Sigh. Dad, you can't mean to chase Olivia out for real, Olivia. Wait. Don't go. Anna suddenly put on an anxious expression and chased after her. In the middle of the yard, only the two sisters remained. Thus, Anna dropped her pretense and crowed delightedly. Did you have a good time that night, Olivia? Olivia paused for a moment and narrowed her eyes. You planned for that person to be there. In return, Anna let out a peal of wild laughter. I went through a lot of trouble to let you experience some fun. I spent more than 10,000 on that. It was that beggar who lived under the overpass. You know him, right? He was so happy to hear about my surprise for you. How was it, Olivia? Upon hearing those words, Olivia curled her hands into tight fists, and her anger led to a rush of blood to the head. She didn't want to hold back anymore. Thus, she reached out and slapped Anna across the face. Ah! Anna did not imagine that Olivia would lash out so suddenly. Therefore, she was completely caught off guard. After receiving 2 slaps in a row, she fell to the ground from the impact. However, it wasn't enough for Olivia to vent out all her hatred for Anna. Hence, she grabbed Anna by the hair and pulled her off the ground. Anna, I am your sister. Not only did you snatch my boyfriend away, but you also used such underhanded methods on me from behind the scenes. How shameless can you be? Unfortunately, she felt somebody pulling her away forcefully from behind just as she was tearing Anna apart, causing her to lose her balance and fall backward. Right before she fell to the ground, she unconsciously covered her belly to protect it. Henry roared furiously. What are you doing? Anna immediately threw herself into Henry's arms, crying aggrievedly. Dad, I just wanted to give Olivia some advice. Not only did she not appreciate my efforts, but she also accused me of snatching Hugo from her. Moreover, she also accused me and Mom of snatching you away and taking over the Maxwell family. She told me and Mom to *CK off. Thus, Henry lightly patted Anna on the back, comforting her. You are my daughter, and I officially and legally married your mother. I won't let anybody drive you away. Olivia curled her lips mockingly. Then, she got off the ground with difficulty and slowly walked to the door while holding her belly. There is nothing left in this family for me anymore. 7 years later, at the airport. Olivia, this way. Nathan Baker happily waved at the woman coming out of the airport. The woman was tall and slender. She wore oversized shades over her fair and delicate-looking face, and her slightly raised chin set off her long and slender neck. In her hand, a beige suitcase was smoothly sliding across the ground, and a cute little boy sat on top of the suitcase. The little boy looked no more than 6 or 7 years old, wearing a windbreaker in the same style as Olivia. He sat atop the suitcase in a well-behaved manner and gave off an extremely likable vibe. Nathan walked up to them and greeted them, then took the luggage from Olivia's hands and jokingly said, "You've finally arrived. Dr. Bailey, you made me wait for such a long time. It was so painful." Olivia handed her luggage over to the man in front of her, lazily glancing sideways at him. "Mr. Baker, I didn't make you wait." "Nathan, I think it's better if you don't mess with Mommy." North Maxwell, the little boy sitting on the suitcase, said, "Little brat, you should address me as Uncle Nathan, do you understand?" "Nah, I'll stick to Nathan." Olivia glanced at the two of them, who quarreled daily, with an expression of indifference and said, "Wait here for me. I am going to the restroom." After saying that, she turned around and hurried toward the direction of the restroom. She had only taken several steps when she suddenly saw a man wearing a baseball cap, sneakily and suspiciously following behind a young girl. Then, the man reached his hand into the girl's coat pocket while the girl wasn't paying attention and pocketed her a brand new phone without a single trace. His actions were smooth and confident. He was accustomed to pickpocketing. Upon seeing that, the corners of Olivia's mouth raised slightly in a smooth arc. Stealing in broad daylight. All right, since I am free, I'll do a little good deed today. Thus, she lowered her head and deliberately ran into the man. She even pretended to stagger backward due to the impact. "Oh, my. I am sorry. I didn't mean to knock into you." The man frowned slightly. He looked vicious and was about to lose his temper. However, when he saw her pretty face, his expression changed completely, and he smilingly said, "It's no big deal. Miss, are you alright?" She shook her head charmingly. "I am okay. Sorry for knocking into you." By the time the two of them went their own ways, The phone was already in Olivia's hands. After that, she looked back at the guy, raising her brows as she smiled slightly. As it so happened, this scene was witnessed by Eugene Nolan, who had just gotten off the plane. The man had a slender body and a cold, handsome face. Moreover, his entire body gave off a sense of dignity that was unparalleled. Upon witnessing the scene, he frowned slightly. I can't believe such a beautiful woman would turn out to be a thief. He found himself feeling slightly disappointed, but he did not plan to interfere in the matter. At that moment, his assistant, Curtis Wood, took the luggage out of his hands. President Nolan, did you manage to find that genius doctor? Eugene rubbed at his temples tiredly. We were one step too late. I heard the doctor returned to Crecia today. Please get somebody to investigate it quickly. Curtis hurriedly lowered his head. I am sorry, President Nolan. There seems to be a high-leveled individual who has been helping the genius doctor hide her identity. Aside from figuring out that the genius doctor's name is Sky Bailey, we can't even figure out whether the genius doctor is a male or a female. Eugene became impatient. Enough. Go to the hackers community and look for Wily Rabbit. You need to locate the genius doctor for me. Grandpa's condition cannot afford any more delays. After saying that, he turned around and walked out of the airport. At that moment, Olivia walked out of the restroom, followed by the girl who had lost her phone during the incident just now. Thank you so much. It is nothing. Hold on to your phone carefully and don't lose it again. At the same time, Nathan was questioning the little boy sitting on the luggage. What's your plans for tomorrow? Will your mom go and treat my great-grandpa tomorrow? North shook his head. Nope. Mommy is going for an interview tomorrow. An interview? Where? The Nolan Group. Nathan was so shocked that he staggered. The Nolan Group. Why there? Obviously to look for a job. Does your mom even need to look for a job? The famous genius doctor, Sky Bailey, won't it be a breeze for her to find a job anywhere? I asked her to. The little boy had a look of yearning on his face. I heard that the Nolan Group is one of the largest conglomerates in Crecia and its subsidiaries are spread out across the globe. Only a company like that can match up to my mommy. No. Nathan hurriedly interrupted him. Then, he lowered his voice and said, I heard that Eugene Nolan, the president of the Nolan Group, is as cruel as a demon. If he becomes your mom's boss, won't your mom suffer every single day? Do you think mommy is a pushover? North glanced at Nathan. You. On the other hand, you seem to be extremely afraid of him. Aren't you? Of course. How can I not be afraid? Just thinking about Eugene's methods made Nathan shudder in fear. Then, North narrowed his eyes. Nathan, are you hiding something from me? And no. Do you want me to investigate it myself? The little guy smiled. But his words were threatening. You stinky brat, how dare you threaten me? Nathan glared at him resentfully. However, alas, he gave in. Okay. I know there is nothing I can hide from the hacking skills of Wily Rabbit. I am terrified of you. To be honest, the president of the Nolan Group is my uncle. But, you have to keep it a secret. You must never reveal to him that I've returned to the country. Otherwise, he might send me off to Africa. North seemed to realize something, nodding his head and muttering to himself. Oh, so you're his nephew. That really slipped past me. What did you say? Glancing at him, North replied. It is nothing. I asked if you did something terrible to your uncle so much so that you don't even dare to return to this country anymore. Nathan hurriedly said. I didn't do anything. It was an accident. Enough. It is not something I can tell a brat like you. As they were talking, Olivia returned. Then, North smilingly said, Mommy, you have to be on time when you attend the interview at the Nolan Group tomorrow. Okay. She glanced at him coolly. I will. You little brat. Pouting, North thought. Do you think it was easy for me to get you to go to the Nolan group? Mommy. While on the road, Olivia stared out at the tall buildings outside the car window, feeling rather emotional. Olivia, it has been 7 years since you last returned. Right? Nathan asked. Yeah, it has been 7 years. If it wasn't for the circumstances back then that had forced my hand, who would be willing to leave one's country for 7 years? At that moment, a familiar building flashed past her eyes. Suddenly it was the Maxwell company. Then, the events of the past flitted through her mind, one by one. Olivia, when will you go and treat my great-grandpa? I will need to make some arrangements too. He dragged her thoughts back to the present. After mulling over it, she replied, tomorrow is Friday, and I have to attend an interview. You can arrange it on either Saturday or Sunday. No problem. Thanks, Olivia. Thanks for flying back, especially for my great-grandpa. She shook her head. It is no big deal. It is not like I came back specifically for your great-grandpa. I just thought that it is time for me to come home. Afterward, they chatted happily in the car. The journey took over an hour before they arrived at La Grande Maison, the residence Nathan had prepared for them. The two of you will live here for the time being. Once an open unit opens up in our community district, I will transfer you over. Thus, Olivia replied. Okay. The next day, Olivia woke up early in the morning, put on some makeup to enhance her beauty, and kissed the little guy goodbye. North, I am going for the interview now. Behave yourself at home. Okay. Also, I contacted your godmother. She'll be here soon to keep you company. North nodded obediently. Do your best, Mommy. Looking ambitious, she assured him. Yeah. Just you wait. North, I am going to make lots of money and support you. Half an hour later, she raised her head to look at the iconic building that reached toward the skies and sighed in amazement. As expected of the Nolan group, it is magnificent. Upon entering the building, she explained the reason for her arrival to the receptionist. Hence, the receptionist immediately invited Curtis over. Mr. Wood, this is Miss Maxwell. She applied for the position of fashion designer and is here for an interview. The position of the fashion designer was a little special. For that reason, the president usually conducted the interview himself. Noted. Curtis replied, lifting his head. His breath caught in his throat and he froze in place when he got a proper look at Olivia's face. TT, this woman. Isn't she the thief President Nolan met at the airport yesterday? Why is she here? Miss Maxwell, please take a seat for the moment. I'll be right back. Curtis hurriedly said to Olivia before rushing into the president's office. President Nolan, do you remember the thief we saw at the airport yesterday? She turned out to be a designer that has applied for a job at our company. Eugene slowly lifted his eyes. Are you sure it is her? Curtis nodded. Absolutely. In response, Eugene narrowed his eyes and threw the pen in his hand onto the table. Bring her here. Yes, sir. After a short while, another knock sounded on the door of the president's office, and he mean-spiritedly spat out a single word. Enter. Therefore, Olivia followed Curtis into the president's office. The office was very large, at least several hundred square meters, with good natural lighting. Even so, the first thing that caught her eye upon entering the room was the man sitting behind the office desk like a king. At that moment, the man was gazing at her intently with a pair of deep eyes and carried a dignified and domineering aura around him. Thus, she was taken aback for a moment. Miss Maxwell, this is the president of our company. President Nolan. Coming back to her senses, she immediately greeted him. Nice to meet you, President Nolan. I came here to interview for the position of a fashion designer. She wasn't a woman easily dazzled by looks, since there were many other good-looking guys around her. However, none of them had ever sent a jolt of electricity coursing through her veins as he did. Not only that, but he also gave her an inexplicable sense of familiarity. Eugene leaned back in his chair lazily. To be honest, this woman is extremely beautiful. What a pity that she is nothing more than a kleptomaniac. Looking at her with his deep eyes, he sneered. Miss Maxwell, the Nolan Group highly values its employees' moral character. Do you think your moral character would be accepted here? His tone was provocative, heavily leaning toward a mocking attitude mixed with some light banter. However, the thinly veiled insults behind his words made Olivia's expression darken immediately. President Nolan, what do you mean by that? Eugene looked at her and slowly articulated his words, word by word. This company does not need an employee with poor moral character, like you. After saying that, he gave Curtis a look. Curtis responded immediately, coming over and gesturing toward the door with a flourish. Olivia was completely disgusted by his attitude. She was aware of reasons such as having a poor resume, being underqualified, or being too nervous at interviews. But she had never seen a person who told her they didn't need an employee with a moral character like hers without even asking anything. What's wrong with my moral character? Thus, she glared at Eugene and scowled fiercely. After wasting her entire morning, her anger could no longer be suppressed. If you don't need me, you can tell that to me directly. Why did you have to take a jab at my character? Do you think anybody cares about a company like yours? Do you think that there aren't any other companies besides yours? After saying that, she turned to leave. Eugene looked at her back and sneered. After that, he casually threw out a sentence. Do you think any other company would dare to hire someone that was rejected by the Nolan Group? Olivia stopped in her tracks abruptly. Then, she looked back at him with a gaze that could freeze a person down to their bones. Don't forget what I said. Even if you beg me to work for you in the future, I would never accept your offer. After she finished speaking, Olivia turned and left the office immediately. Eugene's eyes wavered for a moment. What an arrogant woman. Beg her to work for me. She sure is confident of herself. However, that confident gaze of hers reminded him about a woman he met 7 years ago. After spending the night with him, she disappeared without a trace. Even now, he couldn't locate her. Now that I think about it, that woman 7 years ago was as gutsy as this woman. Sneering to himself, he withdrew his gaze and looked toward Curtis. Have you released an announcement regarding the fact that we want Wiley Rabbit to locate the genius Dr. Sky Bailey? To that question, Curtis hurriedly replied. I've announced it, but Wiley Rabbit has yet to reply. We might need to wait for a while more. By the way, about the Wu Yo-san formula you wanted me to inquire about, I heard that it will be auctioned at a bar tonight. Would you like to check it out? Eugene pondered over it before agreeing. Yeah, I'll check it out. On the other hand, Olivia left the Nolan Group in a huff. Her mind was full of fantasies about how she was going to kill him. That man. I am going to kill him. Getting a taxi by the side of the road, she prepared to go home. However, while they were waiting at a traffic light, a man suddenly collapsed to the ground in front of their car. The driver hurriedly swerved to the side. At the same time, the passersby also avoided the man as they walked by. Nobody seemed to show any intention of going up to the man to help him. Stop the car. I am going to check on the man. Abandoning a man to die wasn't something people in her line of work could do. Miss, I'd advise you not to get out of the car. Nowadays, there are so many traffic accident scams going around. If you run into one, you'd be in a lot of trouble. The driver warned her with a frown, glancing at her through the rearview mirror. Olivia analyzed the situation and said, he collapsed suddenly, he might be sick. I am going to get out of the car to check on him. Upon hearing that, the driver lost his temper. Then, pay your bill. You can do whatever you want after you pay the bill. I don't want to be involved in this mess. She looked at him but didn't say anything. Instead, she decisively took out a 100 bill and threw it at the driver. After getting out of the car, she strode over to the man. The man was very handsome. However, his complexion was pale beyond belief and his eyes were tightly closed as he lay unconscious on the ground. Olivia took his pulse and was surprised to find that despite how young he was, he had a lot of health problems. Nevertheless, under the current circumstances, this man had simply lost consciousness due to low blood sugar. He would be fine once he ate something sweet. Thus, she petted at his pockets. Normally, people with low blood sugar would carry some sweets or biscuits in their pockets. However, she couldn't find anything to eat on him no matter how hard she searched. Just as she was about to take out her phone to call for an ambulance, she noticed that her phone was gone. Did I drop it in the taxi? She sighed. Fortunately, she found the man's phone just now. Using his phone, she hurriedly called for emergency services. Then, she used the phone to call her own phone. Despite ringing several times, nobody answered the call. Afterward, the call was cut off and the other party immediately turned off her phone. Her expression sank immediately. That driver isn't it enough that he doesn't have a single shred of sympathy in his bones. Now, he's even stealing my phone. What wishful thinking. Picking up the phone again, she called North. North, can you check where my phone is? I accidentally left it in a taxi just now. Sure, Mommy. How was your interview? She listened to the little devil's soft baby voice and hurriedly replied. It was okay. She responded to his question vaguely. She was afraid that he would not stop nagging at her. To be honest, Olivia had no intention of looking for work when she returned to the country this time around. She was perfectly capable of starting her own business. However, for some reason, the little devil claimed that it was more stable to get a job compared to starting her own business and even picked out this company for her to interview it. Who could have known I'd meet such a crazy president before I even entered the company? She secretly complained in her heart. I guess my son doesn't have that great of an eye for people after all. After settling the matter with her phone, the ambulance arrived. Since she was rescuing somebody, she decided to go all the way with it. Thus, she followed the man to the hospital out of the kindness in her heart, paid for the surgical fees, helped contact his family, and waited until his family arrived at the hospital before she left. In the president's office at Nolan Group, Curtis came in to report with his phone in his hand. President Nolan, will you look at this? Doesn't the man in the picture look like young Master Brian? Eugene took the phone from him. Displayed across the screen of the phone was a newly posted article with the headline, Collapse of Moral Values, Woman Takes Advantage of a Beautiful Man, that collapsed on the street. Underneath that headline was a clear picture showing a young man unconscious on the ground while a woman groped him up and down. That woman looked nervous. From a certain angle, she certainly looked rather suspicious. Eugene's expression darkened, and the skull on his phone deepened. The man lying there is indeed my brother. While this woman, isn't this the woman who was just here at the company for an interview but was rejected by me due to issues with her character? Why is she stealing my brother's phone now? Handing the phone back to Curtis, Eugene made another call. How is Brian? A woman's voice came through from the other side of the phone. He is fine. It is just his chronic illness. Just now, he fainted by the side of the road and was brought to the hospital by an ambulance. He is fine now, so you don't need to worry. After hearing that, he let out a breath of relief. Recently, I've been looking for a genius doctor by the name of Sky Bailey. Once I locate the doctor, I'll ask him to examine Brian too. The woman paused for a moment. Then, a soft sigh came through the phone. Brian's health has always been like this. I am afraid nobody will be able to make him better. It has been so many years. How many doctors have you found to examine him by now? You've worked so hard for his sake over all these years. It's no big deal. No matter what. He is still my brother. The two of them conversed for a while, then hung up the phone. After knowing that his brother was fine, Eugene felt relieved. His phone is no big deal. What's important is Brian's health. Curtis shook his head helplessly. To be honest, President Nolan cares for his brother a lot, especially when it comes to his health. Yet, the woman in this photo has gotten on President Nolan's bad side time and again. She might be getting in a lot of trouble soon. Olivia returned home. The moment she entered the door, she saw two heads sitting in front of the computer, staring at the computer intently for some reason. What are you guys doing? Kate Thomas looked back. Oh, you're back. Do you know that you've become the hot, trending topic? Many posts are criticizing you all over the internet right now, and North is helping you deal with it. Kate Thomas was Olivia's best friend, and she was also the only person Olivia had told about her return to the country this time. Upon hearing that, Olivia was completely bewildered. What posts? She glanced at the screen and immediately saw the report about the collapse of moral values. I was rescuing a person. Why does the report claim that I am stealing? Would anybody steal anything so openly in broad daylight? Kate pursed her lips. You should continue reading. Those saying that you are a thief are being polite. There are also some saying. The words were on the tip of her tongue, but she glanced at the little boy in front of her, who was not even 7 years old. Then, she swallowed her words. In the end, she leaned close to Olivia's ear and whispered the indecent words. Some claimed you were molesting him. Olivia was so angry that she nearly cursed out loud. Who could have taken my actions so out of context? Did they not see me rescuing the man? Didn't they see me following the ambulance to the hospital? Didn't they see me paying for that man's medical fees from my own wallet? I am such a gorgeous woman, how can they paint me in such a terrible light? The more she vented, the angrier she got. North, investigate who on earth reported that article and block his account. Just because I failed to browse the almanac before I left the house today, I seem to have met all the bad luck in the world. North made a noncommittal sound in response, his small hands flying across the keyboard without stopping. He was extremely focused, and the screen was filled with all sorts of constantly changing codes. It was confusing to look at. Just then, Kate looked over at Olivia and said, by the way, didn't you go for an interview? How did it go? Before the topic was mentioned, Olivia still had her emotions under control. However, the moment it was brought up, she burned with fury. Don't bring it up. I was so pissed off. Kate frowned slightly. What's the matter? The president of the Nolan Group, Eugene Nolan, is a renowned businessman in the industry. Rumors have it that he is both handsome and wealthy. He is the most eligible bachelor across the entire Summer City. Most importantly, I heard that he has been looking for a woman. Olivia waved her hands, feeling a headache coming on. Shut up. That B** start isn't as great as you say he is. Upon hearing that, North, who was sitting in front of the computer, pricked up his ears to listen, and the frown on his face gradually deepened. On the other hand, Olivia sighed and recounted her entire experience during the interview. At the end of her story, she concluded angrily. He claimed that my moral character was poor and even harshly threatened to end my career. What a joke. If I, Olivia Maxwell, want to find a job, who wouldn't he be scrambling over themselves to hire me? Who does he think he is to end my career? Kate patted her back gently. All right. There. Don't be angry. Let us have North teach him a lesson. Olivia nodded her head in response to those words. At that moment, North felt emotionally exhausted. That daddy of mine sure doesn't know the meaning of digging his own grave. To be honest, he had already investigated the truth behind his birth. His mom had told him that his dad had died a long time ago. She also asked him not to bring the subject up and forbade him from asking about it. However, he did not believe her. After investigating behind her back for a long time, his investigation led him to Eugene Nolan. Taking advantage of Nathan's family issues, he coaxed his mom to return to the country and tried every trick in the book to cajole his mom into attending an interview at the Nolan group. He wanted to arrange for his mom to be next to his dad. If he let them meet each other every day, then it was only a matter of time before they fell for each other. However, the two of them had gone and done it. Despite having a good hand of cards, they destroyed the entire game. Rest assured, Mommy, I'll get you your revenge, he replied, looking up at her with a solemn expression. Upon hearing those words, Olivia leaned over and kissed him on the cheek. Oh, North loves me the most. Tell me, how are you going to help me get my revenge? He looked at her earnestly. How much money do you want him to lose? She mulled over it and replied. I spent around 5 minutes inside and outside his office. So, 50 million. As North's small hands busily flew across the computer, a message popped up suddenly. It was a message from the Will-O-Wisp headquarters. There's a large order to locate a genius doctor by the name of Sky Bailey. The upfront fee is 10 million. Do you accept? His small hands paused for a moment. Frowning slightly, he typed out a few words in quick succession. Do you have any information on the poster? It's a guy named Curtis Wood. There is not much other information on him. Curtis Wood. That name sure sounds familiar. That's right. Isn't he that the name of Daddy's special assistant? Then, North lifted the corners of his mouth in an evil smile, looking like a little devil as he typed out his reply, rejected. How the tables have turned. After offending Mommy so thoroughly just now, you turn around and beg for Mommy's help. Find somebody else to help you out. Mommy is busy. All these years, they had been working while keeping a low profile. Therefore, even though Olivia constantly treated many diseases and saved many people, nobody was aware that she was actually the famous genius doctor, Sky Bailey. Right now, I better teach that clueless daddy of mine a lesson. Thanks for listening to the Bravonovel audiobook. Welcome to download the Bravonovel app. Read the novel Superwife's 3 Babies online and get the latest updates.